What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Forever Self-Employed podcast. Today, I'm joined with my buddy Gus. Gus is an ex-Whataburger employee, and in today's video, he's going to spill all the beans on what it was like to work at Whataburger and his experience with that. So, Gus, what is up, man? How's it going?
Going good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm not going to lie. We've already tried to record this a few times, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that it works out this time, just because, this is going to be a good podcast. I'm excited for it. So let's start off with how long you worked at Whataburger for, and then what was your position whenever, like your entry-level position, and then when you finished working for Whataburger, where were you at then?
Okay, so I worked there for a little, like roughly 3 years. And then when I started, I was a team member. When I left, I was a manager.
Okay. And team member is like what you're working the front counter?
Team member is, anything. It just means like you're making the least amount of money because you just started working here.
Right. I mean, whenever I used to work at Domino's and we'd have the CSRs, what they called us, it was a customer service representative. Is that kind of?
Yeah. People, generally women are in the front because they look the best.
Yeah,
the ugly guys like me, they put us in the back with the fries and the grill and stuff like that. So
did they make you cook when you first started, or were you like putting together burgers and stuff?
When I first started, I did fries. I was a fry section.
Okay.
So
I've seen the fry section of McDonald's. Is it anything like that?
Yes and no. Pretty much the same exact concept, except our fries. We're not allowed to keep the fries in there for more than 2.5 minutes, and we have to throw them out.
Really? Huh.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Okay. Sweet. Okay. So, you said whenever you left, you were a manager. Now, what was your reason for leaving Whataburger?
My reason for leaving was essentially because the first store I worked at, I started working there when I was 16 years old. Making my way up, I became really good friends with the general manager at the time, really good guy. I was basically led to believe I was going to have my own store. And then it kind of turned out that wasn't really the case. They were kind of grooming me to be training and stuff like that. So then I got transferred to a different store. And then when I went to school, I got transferred to a different store like 50 miles away. And I went from being in the best store in the state to one of the worst stores in the state. Right. And me and the general manager just had very different ideas of how to run Whataburger, run the shift and everything like that. And what we prioritized were two different things. So we just kind of butted heads. And then in the end, it just didn't really work out.
And what do you think the differentiating factor would be between like the best store in the state versus the worst store in the state? Is it like customer service, or is it just location?
It's a little bit of both, man. The last store I was in was in an older area. How many times do you drive down the road and you see an old restaurant? You're like, oh man, I want to go eat there, So that has a little bit to do with it. It also has to do with how clean your store is very, very important. If your store has a reputation of being dirty, people are not going to come eat there.
Right.
And also the quality of the food. Customer service is kind of a hit or a miss because you have to remember it's a fast food restaurant. It's not like Whataburger, McDonald's, Wendy's are known for their outstanding customer service.
Right.
So really it was quality of the food, how fast you got it out. So efficiency and cleanliness.
Right. Now, if I had to rank Whataburger, I would probably say I would rank them above Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King. I've only been to the one that we have here in Louisiana. Or actually, I've been to two. I've been to two in Louisiana, but I would just say that they're better than those places. I wouldn't rank them with the Chick-fil-A's, but I wouldn't necessarily put them at the bottom of the stack with the McDonald's and all that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think Chick-fil-A is like a whole nother caliber. People like to go in and eat at Chick-fil-A. Mm-hmm. You don't like to go in and eat at Whataburger unless you're like 19. Right. Or you're slapped. So, but yeah, I would definitely above Wendy's and McDonald's. We'd refer to it as we're a fast casual restaurant.
Right. And then also the differentiating factors between the good store and the bad store, you said the other store is probably newer. Maybe it was a little bit faster and it had more of a perception of being cleaner.
Oh yeah, it was definitely way cleaner, way faster, and just way better.
So as a manager, how do they switch you over to a different location like that and then expect you to turn it around?
I really think it was about So I went there. I had 3 different options. I could have gone to the new one by the mall, or I could have gone to the bad one. I was told if I went to the bad one, I'd make more money, and that they wanted me to basically turn the store around.
Right.
The general manager didn't feel like they had a problem, even though they had there was 3 Whataburgers in. It was in Arlington. There was 3 Whataburgers there, and they had the worst revenue of any store in Arlington, and they were in the most high priority location.
Right. Which is in
So
Texas. So for people who don't know, you were in where Whataburger was
Dallas,
created.
yeah,
Right. In
yeah.
Texas.
So
Okay, excellent. So, as a manager, can you just run us through like your duties, your responsibilities? What was expected of you?
so depending on what shift you're a manager on, you have totally different responsibilities. I worked mid shift, and then I worked overnights. So mid shift, which goes into like the evening shift, you come, you clock in. The first thing you do is you check the schedule. You go through, check the schedule, make sure who everybody's supposed to be there is there. You see who's coming in after you. Generally, for me, since I was mid shift for a while, that's when all the teenagers come. So the staff is kind of they don't like to listen and they don't really care. So it's just a little bit harder to run that shift. So you really look for those employees that stand out and those people. And you're like, okay, good, this person's working. Or if you see just to say Kyle always calls in. So you might call somebody and say, okay, hey, Sherry, can you come in and, is there a possibility you could come in and maybe cover the shift that this person doesn't come in? They say, yeah. Then you come out, you do a cleaning inspection, you go through, make sure everything's clean the way it's supposed to be, and then check the food prep, make sure you have enough food for your shift. And then after that, once that's all done, you prep for a rush, which is dinner rush. And then after you prep for dinner rush, you check your labor. So you make sure that your labor is not too high. So our target labor was at 30%. If it was over 30%, depending on where it would be, if our labor was at say 35% on a night after a football game, even up to 40%, it's not that big of a deal. But on a Tuesday and you're at 40% labor, someone's got to go home.
Right. Okay, well that makes sense. No, it sounds cool, man. So how many times would you get? Did you have a lot of no shows? Like people just not showing up to
All
shifts?
the time, all the
Yeah,
time.
I guess in that type of industry, it's just something that you have to deal with on a recurring
Oh yeah,
basis.
absolutely.
Okay,
And you always have it's always the same people too. So you kind of have
really?
to.
How
Yeah.
many no shows until you get fired? Is it one and done, or is you get a couple chances maybe?
It depends. So no call, no show. You get one, and then you get a verbal warning. Then you get another one. It's a write up, and then if they do it again, they're fired.
Dang, man, they give
But
a lot.
call-ins, if they called in over 3 times in a month,
Uh,
which isn't uncommon, and you basically give them. It's basically the same process. It's just extended out.
okay, sounds cool. So, since you were a manager, were you involved in the hiring process?
I was.
Okay, and then people, how did they do the hiring process? Was it an online application?
Yeah, you do an online application, which I don't really like that because you don't get to see the person who's applying.
Right.
But yeah, it was an online
I
application.
hate online applications. I remember whenever I used to work, or whenever I was looking for jobs when I first started looking for jobs, it was everywhere you went, they were like, go ahead and fill out an application online and then we'll get back with you. And I was just like, man, how are you supposed to separate yourself on an application that you're just turning online,
Yeah, and I actually, and this is just a tip, just kind of side note. If you do that and you go to a place, because pretty much all places now, they make you do an online application.
Right.
The way to set yourself apart from everybody else is you make yourself seem more eager. So you put in the application, and then after you put in the application, call.
Right.
And say, hey, did you get my application? And they're
Right.
like, I don't know. And then if I'll check later, then you just call them back an hour and a half later. It's a fast food restaurant. They only stay busy at most 45 minutes to an hour at a time. So
Right.
you call, and then you bug them enough, they'll look at your application, and then they'll either tell you on the phone, yeah, I want you to come in for an interview, or you just keep calling and calling and calling and calling until they're like, just come
Leave
in.
us alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Or leave us alone.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was a way that somebody could set themselves apart on that online application process then.
absolutely.
Okay. Did anybody ever do that?
Yeah, I did.
That's
I
awesome,
did
man.
that. And then, you know, there was other people, and generally, honestly, man, those were usually the best employees. The ones that bugged you the most about wanting to come and work,
Right.
they're the people who work the hardest. They're the ones who go out of the way to make sure they keep their job and they do a good job. And yeah, I mean, I had 3 or 4 guys that came to work with me on overnights that did that. So.
That's awesome, man. So when you're deciding who to pick through all these online applications, are you just picking at random? Is there anything you're looking for in those applications? I mean, obviously this is a minimum wage fast food job, so you're not looking for anything crazy, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, what Whataburger does is it filters. There's a portal.
Hmm.
It's called WBU. It stands for Whataburger University.
Okay.
And when you're a manager, yeah, you have access to it, and it sends you applications. Well, what it does is it flags certain words on your application as no-go words and go words. So, you know, whether it's kind of like Indeed, how they pre-qualify an applicant to allow the person to make their decision easier. That's basically what it was. And people who had a lot of green flags, those would be the ones who get called in first. And basically, whenever we needed people and there'd be not a lot of applications, that's when you start reaching into the barrel of red flags, which, you know, I never really noticed a difference in employees that had green flags versus red flags. So.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea that that much went into it actually. So is there like I don't know if you remember the application process, but is there like a questionnaire or something? Is there like a personality questionnaire that kind of will
Yeah,
give
there's two.
off?
There's a personality questionnaire, and then there's an aptitude questionnaire.
Mm,
So, and then you on the personality questionnaire, it kind of mattered, but the aptitude questionnaire, if you got more than 10 questions wrong, basically your application was disqualified. And it was like a 70 question.
no way. Dude, that's incredible. They don't give you that kind of insight. I remember one time I applied for a job at a racetrack, and I thought the funniest thing, they made me do like a kind of questionnaire similar to that. And I thought the funniest thing was the last question on the application was, "What was your race?" And then I put white, and then that was it. They didn't ask me any more questions after that. So I thought maybe that had something to do with the hiring process or something, but I got called in and then they offered me a job, but then I was like, you know what, I can't work at racetrack. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. I had no idea that much stuff went into it. So if you were giving advice to anybody filling out online applications, I mean, you would think to some extent that the right answers would kind of be like, you kind of be able to pick the right answers, but is there any kind of way that you could stand out on an online application, you know, just with the questionnaire?
I mean, as far as the questionnaire, man, not really. I would say basically, there's plenty of time to do it. I mean, they allot you, I think, an hour to do so many questions, and
Right,
they're like one sentence questions.
right.
Um,
And you could pretty much lie through
and
it. I think that's why I think that's why you said there's not really that much of a difference between the ones with all the green flags and ones with all the red, you know?
yeah, and you know, the biggest thing is just remember stealing is wrong. There's a lot of questions about stealing. There's a lot of like basic addition, 1+1. You know, if you have one chicken strip and then they add 2 chicken strips, it's 3 chicken strips. It's not complex. But just pay attention. The personality questionnaire deals a lot with like integrity and, oh, if you see somebody doing something bad, would you
Right.
tell on them? Even if you wouldn't, say that you would, or you're
Right,
not going
right,
to get
right,
it.
right.
Um,
Absolutely. That should be common
then
sense for people, right?
absolutely. But as far as that, man, the biggest thing is experience. Try to have some sort of work experience on there, especially when you're young. You
Mm,
know, put on there that you cut your neighbor's grass for $10, you know, or whatever, and that shows people that you know how to work, that you're willing to work, and that you sustain some sort of work ethic. Because even though it is fast food, there you have hundreds of people applying every day.
right. Right, right, right. So you probably did a lot of interviews then since you were a manager, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the worst interviews if you can even remember those?
Um,
Or even what were some of the questions that you would ask?
I'd basically ask, you know, have you ever worked in fast food before? Or I would say, have you worked in the service industry? And then they'd be like, oh, what do you mean? And you're like, have you ever flipped burgers, dropped fries? And 9 times out of 10, man, it was a no.
Right.
And then you have basically like, do you have a ride to and from work? Are you willing to work on weekends, which is super big? Like if you work in the food industry, you have to be able to work on weekends.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I would say the worst interview I ever had was a guy came in after school and then he changed in the bathroom because I guess he like got back from like football practice or something.
Right.
He changed in the bathroom and then um, didn't really say anything the whole interview. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll call you. And then he just looks at me and I'm like, what's up? And he just goes, oh, so when am I starting? And I was just like, that's not really how it works, man. But I mean, I didn't really ever have anything crazy happen.
Right.
Um, I had some wild like people's first days, but besides that, I mean, nothing really bad. I met some interesting characters. There was this gentleman, I'll leave him unnamed, but
Probably for the
he
best.
was very eccentric, not ordinary, you know, said some pretty crazy things to me about just really crazy stuff. No, there wasn't really anything crazy as far as interview goes, because I mean, people are still trying to get a job.
Right. It's the first impression. They're trying to set that good first impression up. Okay, cool. And then also, well, one of the top questions on Google is whether or not you guys drug test or not. So I guess we'll go ahead and answer that.
Whataburger, when you fill out your application, says you are subjected to random drug tests when they see fit. And if they make you do a drug test and you refuse, you get fired. But
Okay.
no, there is no hiring drug test.
Sweet, man. And then also, how many people would get hired versus how many people would get turned away? I mean, if somebody was just normal, obviously they'd get the job. But I mean, would you turn people away? Was it,
Yeah, I mean, I've told people before, like, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. People just, you kind of can tell their attitude, like, oh, whatever, I don't care, man, no big deal.
right,
Or people who are like, oh, I don't have a ride, and you know, I can only work Thursday after 2:00, and I can't work any other day.
right.
I mean, those people, I'd be like, you know, I don't think this is going to be a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, generally, if you get to the interview process in a fast food restaurant setting, generally, if you're not an idiot, you're gonna get the job.
Right, right. Because it's not necessarily like such a high bar. I mean, like you even said, you don't have to necessarily have a bunch of previous job experience as long as you're a functioning human being. It sounds like you're
Yeah, pretty
pretty.
much. Yeah.
Right. So, try to touch on, if you could, how was it managing minimum wage employees? I mean, there's not a lot of incentive there for a lot of hard work. Was it mostly younger people you were working with, and how did you kind of corral them and get them to do the best they could?
Younger people, they definitely respond to a lot of like incentives. So we had employee of the month incentives, where we would give $100 gift card at the end of the month. It was a Visa gift card, so you can go anywhere you want. To the best, you know, who the managers decided was the best employee that month.
Right.
I would tend to offer, they were called sub meals. So basically we would pay the cost of the meal, the restaurant would. So like, you know, you'd incentivize like, all right, well, tonight's going to be a busy night. Whoever stands out the most, they're going to get a free meal and pie or shake, whatever they want.
Right.
And then also, Ben, when you're dealing with younger people, there's two different ways to kind of go about it. They don't like disciplinary action. So if you tell somebody like, hey, I'm not trying to be rude, but I need you to do this, you know, and if they don't do it, that's when you say like, look, if you don't do this, I'm going to write you up. And they're there because, especially if they're younger, because their parents tell them they have to. And if they get fired, they're going to be in trouble.
Right.
So they don't like that. So, I mean, that's kind of a way to do it. I used to always just try to be upbeat, have a good attitude. You know, don't try to be too cracking the whip, because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
these are 16, 17, 18-year-olds for the most part.
Right.
And when you try to do that, especially when you're in the same age group with them, like I was,
Mm-hmm.
they don't respond very well to it. They're just like, oh, this guy thinks he's better than us, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. But generally motivating, you just have to give them incentives.
That's
And
awesome, man.
sometimes if somebody really like knocked it out of the park, like especially after football games and stuff, because there was kind of 3 high schools right in the area of where the first store I worked at, I'd say, you know, if someone did a really good job and stood out, I'd be like, hey, look, you know, here's $20 and I'll sub your meal for you to, you know, have a good night, whatever. You let people hey, you want to leave early? You did an awesome job. You want to go home? Yeah, so you let them go home. So.
Dude, that's super awesome, man. Because like thinking, like just hearing you talk about all that brings me back to whenever I used to work at Domino's, and at Domino's there was absolutely no incentive to work harder because man, we would be slammed. Like talk about like Saturday night, Friday night, we would be absolutely slammed, and then there was no employee of the month program. There was no, like you said, they wouldn't comp any meals. I mean, if we messed up on a pizza, we get to eat it for free. But I think that's just cool. Obviously, there's more incentives there, and it's easier to motivate. So you were saying it's easier to motivate on the positive end by having rewards on the positive end than it is to motivate more so on the negative end, offering like you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
People are more
absolutely.
motivated to work towards the reward than they are when you offer the punishment, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Positive reinforcement is a lot more effective than negative reinforcement.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So tell us about working in the fast food industry. What would make like a good employee versus just an average Joe, and then also like a bad employee?
Okay, so, and this is something that I think a lot of people think about. I mean, maybe not necessarily in their day-to-day lives, but whenever you're in that industry, you're like, man, I'm a good employee. What's going on?
Mm,
And it's different in the fast food industry than I would imagine any other industry, because generally in most industries you have to excel. You have to go above and beyond.
mm,
That's not what it takes to be a good employee for fast food. A good employee or a great employee for in a fast food setting is somebody who comes to work when they're supposed to come to work, somebody who doesn't sit on their phone the whole time they're at work, somebody who listens, takes constructive criticism, does their job just really the way it's supposed to be done. That's what a good employee is in the fast food industry. Doing your job is being a good
right.
employee. Being a normal employee is like calling off twice a month. Not really being a great listener, kind of just doing it the way you want to do it because you think that's the best way, even though it causes negative repercussions.
Mm,
But you know that you can kind of rely on them. You know that they know the system. That's an average employee. A bad employee, which you see a lot, is bad attitude. They miss probably more than 4 days a month. Every time it's Friday night, their uncle's hamster has pneumonia, so they have to call out. Um, and it's, I mean, that's really what makes a bad employee. And then another thing is people who it's almost seems like they go out of their way to make their night harder or make your job harder.
right.
For instance, I had this guy that I used to work with. He'd been working with us for about 3 months, and he worked what we called MUT, which is the makeup table,
Mm,
which is where they, actually put together the hamburgers and stuff.
right.
And well, one night we didn't have anybody on fry station. I knew we needed fry station, so I put him on fry station. He threw this huge fit, F that, F this, slamming stuff down, not drop, or either not dropping enough fries or dropping he would drop like 2 bags of fries, which is like 6 baskets at one time. So the fries would get wasted. And those people, like when they get like that, you're just like, okay, go home. You're trying to get sent home. You're acting like a baby, just go home. That's what a bad employee is.
That's kind of funny because, like you mentioned, the great employees are just people that are consistent and that do their job, and that's really a shame that more people can't be the great employees, because that should be really the standard, is somebody who shows up on time and does their job. But,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
in that industry, it's just a lot of turnover, and, you could go somewhere else and get a job, doing the same thing at somewhere else. So there's not as
Yeah.
much fear of losing it, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so did you have to fire employees? And then if you did, what was the best way to go about doing something like that?
Yeah, I've had to fire employees before. The best way that I found to go about it is essentially you explain to them that this is not the company's fault, or this is not you as a manager's fault. You basically describe, okay, this is what you're doing, or this is a situation. You explain like you've been warned about it XYZ times. These are the instances, and you basically make them feel bad without beating them down.
Right.
You say like, look, basically, if it would be like, hey, Justin, can I talk to you for a second? You come in the office. I say, look, man, I've tried talking to you about this. We've been over it time and time again. You've been written up twice for it. You got to show up on time. And you just haven't been able to do that.
Right.
We like you. We think you're a good guy. It's nothing personal. But in order to be successful in life, you have to be able to show up to places on time. And that's what a part of doing this job is.
Right.
So I'm sorry, Justin, but you're not going to be able to work here anymore. But I do wish you the best in your future endeavors.
Wow. You put
So
that
basically,
good, man. I feel good about that.
yeah. So, I mean, dude, whenever especially when you let someone go, they automatically want to get mad and angry at you.
Right.
But basically, if you lay it out like, this is your fault without beating them down, and then you say like, you basically give them some negative and then give them a little positive,
Mm-hmm.
and then give them some negative again. And then the reason I always say you're not going to be able to work here anymore is you want to instill to them like, look, it's a privilege to work. There's plenty of people out there that would kill to have a job at all. It's a privilege to work. It's a privilege to work here. And if you're not going to take that seriously, then you're not going to work here with us anymore.
Right.
Which I think kind of reaches them, especially when you're dealing with younger kids, because they're like, okay, it's important to show up on time. So maybe at their next job, they'll become a little bit more successful because they will know that showing up on time is important, or not calling in, or whatever the situation might be.
Right. And I know you've probably seen people fired in the wrong ways. So can you kind of speak to that and what would be like an example of like the wrong way to go about firing somebody?
Yeah, I would say firing somebody the wrong way is, one, firing somebody who doesn't deserve to be fired, which I've seen happen a lot of times.
Right.
It might be somebody who like rubs the GM the wrong way since they started, and they do one thing and it's like, that's it. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back, that one instance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. There's plenty of guys that I worked with that I didn't like, that I knew were decent at their job, so I kept them around.
Right.
But basically a way would be like, Justin, come in my office right now.
Right.
I mean,
Get out.
like,
Yeah.
you're thinking like, you're like, what's going on? And then they come in the office and you're like, look, man, you can't show up on time. Like, do you own a clock? Does your car have a clock in it?
Right.
And then you're like, yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, so there's no excuse for you to not be here. Get out. You're fired.
Yeah, almost like degrading a little bit. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. Man, okay, awesome. And that's good because the way that we phrase things and the way we word things is really important, man, just for, how the other person feels. And then also if you upset the wrong person, man, you could have a whole, mutiny on your hands,
Oh yeah. I mean, I've done it what I would consider to be the right way before, and I've had people threaten to come and burn the restaurant down and beat me up. So I mean, so
Dude,
people are crazy.
that is wild. So how hard is it to advance in the company? Would you say?
Whataburger, it depends, man. It depends who you are. Like, I worked with a lot of people who are older than me, who had been there for a long time, who were upset that I was getting promoted and they weren't. But I always could see like they complain too much, or it's always, I gotta make more money, or this is my favorite thing, I don't make enough money to do that. Well,
They don't
how are
me
you ever
enough,
gonna make
right?
more money? Yeah. Oh, they don't pay me enough to do that. It's like,
Mhm.
well, how are you ever going to make more money if you don't set yourself apart? So that's what it is, man. Don't be the good employee, be the extraordinary employee in that industry. Go out of your way to do it. Pick up shifts, call up, hey, I want to work. Did somebody not show up? 9 times out of 10, yeah, so-and-so didn't show up. Come in, be here. And then actually show up.
Right.
Go, work hard every day, stay late, come early. And honestly, dude, if you do that, even though it's hard work on the front end, it's kind of like a smooth sailing ship after that. Because if you listen to the instruction of your upper level managers, like when you're a shift lead, I would kiss the GM's ass and he would help me out a lot. And so, and he taught me a lot of stuff about efficiency and hitting numbers and stuff like that. And then when you do that, when you get close to somebody in upper level management, it's a lot easier, man, to advance. But it really just depends on who you are as a person, who you are as a worker. Because I have met people who work there, who I knew when I worked there, who still work there, who are still doing the same thing they were doing and were doing it 5 years before that, 6 years before that.
And they will still
So
be doing it in the future.
absolutely.
Right. So for somebody who's willing to work hard, willing to show up, there is opportunity in the company to move up though.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have like a worse employee story or anything that sticks out to you? Any disgruntled employees perhaps?
Um, yeah, I mean, I have a couple. I think the one that stands out the most to me, the worst employee ever, was this guy who started in his first week. He was written up for stealing chicken strips. So I wrote him up. So what happened was is he came in and I'm like, man, where is this guy at? I'm like looking around. I go to the bathroom. He's not in there because I hadn't seen him in like 30 minutes. And then I go open up the walk-in and he's like in there shoving chicken strips in his face. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, oh man, I was hungry. I'm like, dude, you can't just grab stuff and start eating it. He's
Right.
like, oh man, this is BS. Like, oh, at the other place I used to work at, they used to let us eat whenever we wanted. And I'm like, well, this isn't the other place. And I kept catching him doing that all in a matter of a week. And then the last day that he worked there, I was in the office and I was looking at the cameras and I saw him on the camera. Somebody gave him a $20 bill and he pretended like he put it in a little slot, but he put it in his pocket. And had like just waited. I just had him come in the office. I'm like, hey, so how's that 20 feel in your back pocket? And he's like, and he just goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean what I mean? Like, why'd you put that money in your back pocket? Oh man, I didn't put anything in my back pocket. What are you talking about? You crazy. I'm like, nah, man, definitely not. And then so I had to call the police.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. I mean, and he was probably the worst employee I ever had. But the guy that he was a bad employee, but he was such a nice guy. He was kind of an irregular dude, but I had to fire him because he was just so bad at everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was good. He showed up every day on time, but he was so bad at everything. He was always like breaking stuff and knocking stuff over and like dropping stuff and running into people. And those suck. But I mean, besides that, man, it was pretty normal. We did have an employee who got fired on an overnight shift because he went outside and ripped his shirt off and started fighting somebody in the parking lot.
Man, you hate to see
But,
it happen.
oh, I mean, we didn't hate to see it. It was like 2 a.m. and we were super slow. And this guy came through the drive-thru and was like, "Oh, he was drunk," and he said something to this guy, and this guy had like a short fuse. He was like, "Oh yeah, well, I'll meet you outside." And he ripped his shirt off and was like, pulled the guy out of his car and beat him up. Yeah,
Dude, that's terrible. I
yeah,
used
it was
to
not.
whenever I worked at Domino's, I had a manager that would just like do drugs on the clock, and he was
Oh
stealing
wow.
money and stuff. So that seems like some pretty typical stuff in that industry. I'm sure that happens a lot.
Yeah, whenever I worked at a restaurant as a busboy, and the guys used to go in the back and snort coke and drink like 40s of Bud Ice,
Right.
and then the guy come back and cook, and I'm like, dude, how do you function doing
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I know. I know that's pretty crazy. So like there's not a difference between the cooks and you said that they would usually have like girls working the front counter and stuff, and then like the guys would be in the back of the house cooking and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, and we did have girls that were on the grill. We had girls that were on the makeup table, but girls were primarily, when the girls worked, they were in the front or they were in the drive-through, um, putting out orders, or they were in the bubble taking orders.
Right.
Um, and then, but it just depended on the person. If they were like, no, I don't want to do orders anymore, put me in the back. So that's what we would do.
No, that's cool. Super cool, man. So were the customers generally were like friendly customers, or like obviously you're gonna have a mixed bag, especially when you're dealing with, all kind of different people who come to the restaurant. But for the most part, would you say like everybody was generally friendly? Or what was your feel on the clientele that went to Whataburger?
It's kind of a hit and miss, man. I'd say it's 50-50, 50% were nice. But the thing is the people who were mean, they weren't just mean. They would like trash you to your face.
Really?
Like you'd make a mistake and be like, oh, that's why you're working at Whataburger, you dummy. And then, you know, they would talk bad about you. I mean, I had lots of people say very bad things about me to my face about stuff that, you know, was out of my control. I had a guy said he was going to come in and drag me outside and take care of me because I asked him to back up to the back window and he was saying it was my fault. And I was like, no, sir, it was not my fault. You didn't listen to me when I instructed you to park at the first window. He was
Right.
like, oh, you're getting lip with me. I'll take you outside and take care of you. And I was like, all right. Not sure what that means, sir, but have a good night.
Oh man, that sucks, man. You hate to hear stuff like that, but I guess you know, any industry, you're gonna have upset customers
Oh,
and
yeah.
customers that are just. It's crazy though. Like I would never treat somebody how I wouldn't want to be treated. You know, I always live by that mantra. You know, treat people how you want to be treated, and like I'm always friendly and asking questions and stuff. So I don't know, man. I just couldn't see myself ever doing something like that to
Well,
an
and that
employee.
might also be because you worked at Domino's. I mean, when you work in that industry, dude, you have a totally different outlook on it.
Right.
Because people who don't, you know, they grow up and maybe they didn't have to have a job or they didn't want to, and their parents didn't make them. You know, they just see those people are like, oh, those are the lowly plebs at, you know, whatever restaurant. And, you know,
Right.
not everybody who works at those restaurants is a 40-year-old who, you know, smoked crack their whole life. Like there's people there who are young, who are starting out. There's
Right.
also people there who in their 30s and 40s who have hit a hard spot in life, or maybe they're working a second job to put their kids through school. Like it's, you always want to approach it like that's you behind the counter.
No, absolutely.
But
And okay.
no, I was just say everybody has their moments, you know, when they might get a little short with somebody. I know how I have. I'm sure you have too, Justin. So
Come on, man. Don't put me under the bus like that. No, I'm just kidding. But dude, I have one specific customer that sticks out in my head more than anybody. Like I can't remember anybody at Domino's ever besides this one customer, and it's because he made me feel so bad in a moment. So I was on the phone. Like I said, I was a CSR, so customer service representative. I would answer the phones and then take the orders over the phones. And you know, I was super polite. I was like an 18-year-old kid. And I was just like, hey, you know, what can I get for you? I was taking an order. And like as I was wrapping up the order, I was like, all right, man, your total is going to be 23.57 or whatever it was. And he was like, man, who do you think you're calling man? You refer to me as sir. And like, dude, he was like going off on me. And like, I'll never forget how I felt in that moment. Like I felt like so small, I guess you could say, but you know, you live and you
it
learn.
happens
So
a lot, man. It's happened a lot to me. I mean, I've had people cuss me out for calling them no problem, bud. Oh, I'm not your effing bud. You know,
yeah.
every name book and you know.
Mhm. It is what it is, you know. I'm like, all right, man. I'll talk to you later. You know, I don't know. Okay, so you obviously don't work at Whataburger anymore. I mean, you've moved on. You're doing bigger and better things now. Not to say that working at Whataburger is not good, but would you still go to Whataburger after not working there, or after working there for as
Oh,
long
dude,
as you did?
I love Whataburger. You know, as you said, like Whataburger is from Texas.
Right,
It's a big deal. You know, people in Texas, you know, I'm sure the perception of Texans outside of Texas probably isn't the best. We are as arrogant as we seem. Everything from Texas and in Texas is the best.
right,
You know, there's always a saying is, um, like, I'm a Texan first, American second. Is
right.
like, obviously that's not really the case, but people say it as kind of a way to say like, look, we truly believe that we are the best here. And with it being from Texas, it's kind of just ingrained in you from a small kid, you know, like whenever you're young and they serve breakfast from 11 to 11. So when
Mhm.
11 p.m. rolls around and your mom's like, oh man, you know, it sounds good. Some Whataburger taquitos. And you're like, yeah. And then you go, you know, I kind of think it sticks with pretty much everybody
They
in that way.
serve breakfast
So,
from 11 p.m. to 11 a.m.
yep.
Whoa, that's wild. So you could go
Oh,
get a
dude.
breakfast biscuit at like 2 a.m.
Yep. And Whataburger's breakfast is like the best of any
Dude,
fast food restaurant.
how do they
100%.
how do they keep the cinnamon rolls hot all day? Or I
They
don't
don't.
know. They don't?
No, so I don't know. So one of the deep dark secrets of Whataburger is there's two things. Um, sorry for anybody who likes the avocado bacon burger, do not eat the avocado from Whataburger.
Okay.
It's disgusting. It turns brown. It sits out all day warm. Don't eat it. It's gross. The other thing is our cinnamon rolls are like prepackaged. They come they sit in the dry storage, and then we like cut them out with this little plastic knife thing and put them in the microwave. That's it.
Oh man. I don't know who turned me on to the cinnamon rolls, but man, they're so good. But to know
Yeah,
that they're just like cut out and put in the microwave, I mean,
yeah, dude. I mean, it's basically a gas station cinnamon roll that you slap in the microwave for 20 seconds. It's like, pop-bam, Whataburger cinnamon roll.
dude, they're good and they seem like they're fresh baked or something.
Oh, they are very good. They're very good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. You'd eat one, huh? I'm
Yeah,
not.
definitely. I mean, but I'd eat anything. So
I'm kind of the same way. I tried out that new Popeyes chicken sandwich, and I was like, this thing is great, but I pretty much think a lot of things are great, you know?
yeah, dude, absolutely. No, I'm the same way. But no, dude, I love going to Whataburger. My favorite thing there is a patty melt. You go get the patty melt. Chip to Whataburgers always ask for any vegetables that are grilled, like grilled onions, grilled peppers, because the Monterey melt. Always ask them for extra grilled. What I always say is I want them grilled, not hot, because what they'll do is they'll just put them on the grill and they'll like hit them with the press real quick. If they're not doing it the right way, which most of the people do it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So the vegetables aren't cooked. So you have to throw them extra grilled. And then, dude, it just like hits so good. And then smack the fries.
Come
Coke.
on.
Oh yeah.
I love how salty their fries are too. I'd put Whataburger's fries up there with anybody.
Yep. They use a special seasoning. It's called What a Seasoning.
Come on, I didn't even know that. So
Yep.
what was the most valuable lesson that you learned from your whole work experience at Whataburger?
My most valuable lesson kind of goes back to what we were talking about just a minute ago. It's like, don't judge people who work in that industry before you get to know them, because everybody who works there is different and everybody's there for different reasons, as far as like, besides that, from like a moral level, just like a rational level, you can move up anywhere you are as long as you're willing to work hard, show up on time. That was something that I always had problems with when I was younger. And now I'm like, I hate being late. And I think part of that's from Whataburger. Mm-hmm. Because when people know that you can be on time, they know like they can rely on you to do anything.
Right. And that's awesome. So another question, give us your opinion on raising the minimum wage. I mean, obviously you've been in this industry, you know how hard people work for what they get. How do you feel about them trying to raise the minimum wage to, let's say, $12?
I don't think it's a good idea. And I will say, because what that does is you have managers who make $15, $16 an hour. Okay. Those are your higher level employees. Mm-hmm. So if you take the people who are down, which I mean, really, Whataburger pays pretty decent as far as the fast food industry. They generally pay around $10 an hour. Right. So you take all those people who are at $10 an hour and you put them to $15 an hour. So what do you do with those managers? Do you raise their salary too, or do you leave them the same? Right. Because the company still has to make sure they're bringing in enough revenue. Mm-hmm. I think that people work hard, but I think the best thing to say to people is that if you've been working somewhere for a long time and you're not going up, there's two things you need to examine. One, is it you or is it the company you work for? Right. If you really look at it from an unbiased perspective and you say, okay, I know I show up every day. I know I always listen. I know I always do the best that I can possibly do. It's probably the company you work for. Right. But if that's not the case, and you're like, okay, well, I do miss a lot. I'm late, sometimes. And, I kind of do things my own way. I don't really go with the flow. It's probably you. Maybe you should look at changing what you're doing, because I went from being 16 years old and being a team member to by the time I was 18 years old, I was a manager and and I was training other managers. Right. And I was making $17 an hour at that time. So you're obviously doing something right. Yeah. So the opportunity is there, but the problem is, in my mindset, is that you don't deserve it unless you've earned it. And if the minimum wage goes up to that high, I mean, it's really going to cripple a lot of people who worked hard for so long to make that amount of money, because they're not going to get that raise.
Right.
So what's going to happen? Your managers are going to be making minimum wage.
Right. And then even if you raise the manager's wages, I mean, how far off are they from the regional manager, from the overseers of them, and then you got to bump them, and it goes up the line, and then the food prices go
Yeah.
up, and then people complain that the food prices are too high. So
They're
it's
like, oh man, I can't get a living wage, and I can't. Oh, well, now that I'm making this amount of money, it's like, oh man, I still can't afford this stuff. It's like, yeah, because you're not supposed to work at Whataburger for your whole life.
right.
Like,
And I think,
and I'm not knocking anybody who does, but
right.
those jobs are designed to have low overhead,
Mm-hmm.
so the company can make a lot of money.
Right.
Right. They're never going to change that business model.
Right.
They're never going to change it. So instead of trying to force that down their throats, maybe look at the opportunity and say, maybe I need to go get my GED, or maybe I need to start taking night classes. I've learned a lot of what I know, and my work ethic has come a lot from my grandmother. My grandmother was a single mom of 6
Mm-hmm.
that started working off at the bank as a bank teller, and she used to make $243 a month.
Right.
And took care of 6 kids on $243 a month.
That's crazy.
And although the cost of living was less than that, you were still like very poor making that amount of money then.
Right.
That was in the 60s and 70s. And, but she gritted her teeth and she worked hard, and she was a bank man. By the time that she was in her late 40s, she was a bank manager, and she made very good money.
Right.
And now she has a great retirement and lives a good life.
Of course, man. So what you're saying is, for people who are upset with the minimum wage, should more so look towards themselves, because those jobs are more stepping stones to bigger jobs rather than places that these people should be staying.
Yeah, because I think the biggest thing is look at it like this. If Uncle Sam can put money in your pocket, he can pull it out.
Right. Right. So is there any secrets about this is my last question on Whataburger. Any secrets about Whataburger? Any secret menu items? I don't know. They always make those videos on the secret menu items.
Yeah, there at our Whataburger, we made a burger. It was me and this guy I worked with. His name was Donovan. He's not gonna sue me or anything for saying this, so don't worry about it. He's a cool guy. He's in the Marines, but we worked overnights together, and he was a shift lead and I was a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to make this burger that we called Big Bad Burger. So basically what it was a regular bun. You had a Whata chicken, and then you had a Whata chicken, and then you had 2 meats, and then you put the grilled vegetables, and then you put jalapeno ranch in the middle and creamy pepper on the top. And it was like this high. And we used to serve it to all the people who were drunk that would come in on overnights.
Right.
And it would get to be where on Fridays and Saturday nights, we would have the same people come in every single Friday and Saturday night and get the same thing. But as far as things that are you can get anywhere, not that I know of.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody pulled up in the drive-thru and mentioned some secret menu item. It's not like y'all would know what to do or know what it was necessarily.
No, if someone was like, "Hey, make me a Shazam," I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know what that is, bro. Just tell me what it is."
Okay, sweet, man. So that's pretty much gonna wrap up the Whataburger portion of this video. We'll go and wrap it up here. My name is Justin. This is Forever Self-Employed, and until next time, hustle hard and get that money, baby. Peace.